What's up, guys? How we doing? Got a Wednesday Linc on a Thursday. Feels like I've seen that or said that a couple different times throughout the summer. But it's the summer schedule depends on when things are going on, news breaking, everything else. But Thomas, how you doing?
Doing well. Yeah, and a couple more weeks, and then it'll be back to our regular scheduled programming because we'll have practices to talk about, and so we'll do it in the evening. But right now, we both have family stuff going on, and so pretty easy to jump on here and to do our normal weekly live stream a day later. But still, plenty to talk about, Josh. Not a ton of news. Ton of people trying to make news, and obviously you and I have talked about on our channels the past couple of days the NFC East and where teams rank, where Philadelphia should be. Are the Commanders going to be good? Giants made all these different moves and so on and so forth. So plenty of stuff to go ahead and jump on and talk about.
There we go. And we could start wherever, really. But, we kind of initially going with the NFC East outlook because, as you mentioned there, and as we've talked about, a couple different areas of, where the Eagles going to fall. Like, it's been 21 years since there's been a repeat champion in the NFC East. Everyone knows that. It's been brought up tons of times. But I'm starting to see some Commanders writers, some Cowboys writers give a little bit of credit to the Eagles and saying like they would pick the Eagles. Now, I don't know if that's a reverse jinx type of strategy there or, what the case may be, but at least there's maybe some objectivity of looking at it and going like, yes, the Commanders, sure, they made an incredible run. They surprised a lot of people all the way to the NFC Championship game. Dallas is Dallas. The Giants are the Giants, the status where they're at right now. But the Eagles, I mean, come on. They won the Super Bowl. They blew out the Chiefs. They lost a few players, but they have most of the guys back. I mean, certainly the core. And so you look at this group, yeah, every team has question marks, but I mean, is it even close? Like, who's the top competition? Is it even that close for the NFC East?
Yes and no. I was thinking about this earlier. I did a show in a couple of days ago. It kind of feels like the NFC East this year is the AFC West of the past couple of seasons, where there are three very interesting teams trying to battle for that number one spot, but everyone knows there's another team that's going to win it, in the Kansas City Chiefs. And even though the Chiefs, had moments up and down during regular seasons, I remember a couple years ago, they won the Super Bowl and they lost. It was either Thanksgiving or a Christmas kind of Black Friday game against the Raiders. It was like, oh, panic here and there. But everybody knew the Chiefs were going to win that division, even the Broncos, the Raiders, and the Chargers. It kind of feels that way right now, at least from an Eagle perspective, that most people assume Philadelphia is the dominant team, leagues ahead of everybody else, and they're going to go ahead and obviously win this division. Now, that does not mean, much like with the AFC West, there aren't three pretty decent teams this year in the NFC East trying to dethrone the Philadelphia Eagles. And you could argue the Chargers are starting to up and coming. They're got their head coach now. Can they find a passing game and a running game and all sorts of stuff on offense? Same with the Broncos, and then we'll see what the Raiders do. They've looked very different. But you can kind of compare all those teams to NFC East teams. The Commanders feel closest, mainly because they were this past season, although I want to talk about them here in a second. Dallas feels the furthest away. I think the Giants' defense is going to have them better than the Dallas Cowboys this year. I just wonder how the Giant offense as a whole is going to look. Year two Malik Neighbors, year two Tyron Tracy, their best kind of 1-2 punch in a very long time, especially at wide receiver. But are they going to just ride Russell Wilson for 5, 6, 7 weeks? Hardest schedule in the NFL, by the way. And then, lose all those games and then insert Jackson Dart. He's going to be a rookie, so have his ups and downs. I don't quite know where to put the Giants right now, but it feels like Philly, Commanders, Giants, Cowboys are how I'm ranking them. But I think you can make an argument for any one of those teams to have a pretty solid season. I just think Philadelphia's better.
Okay, that's very interesting because I would say we're different in terms of the rankings there. I actually, believe it or not, have Eagles, Dallas, Commanders, Giants.
Really?
So that would be
Dallas
would be
is
my
too?
ranking there. Yep.
What's the 90-second pitch on the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean, okay, well, I don't want to give a lot of praise and credit here because I'm not saying they're winning the division, but I just think and this is, assumption of every team being healthy, of course, so you always throw that caveat out there. But if they're healthy, because they had a lot of injuries, but if they're healthy, George Pickens, complete wild card. I could totally see it backfiring, and so that's what I'm hoping for. I'm ready to just watch the implosion on the sidelines, but the offensive output there, I think, could be enough. And you look at their schedule, like you said, the Giants having the most difficult schedule.
It is easy.
The Cowboys one's not very difficult. Like, they have a great opportunity to just kind of rack up these wins, and I could see it. I could also see it where they go sideways or backwards, and it's not great. But I could see it where we get later in the year, and people believe they're better than they are because of the record. They look at it and go, dang, like the Cowboys have a chance to win the division. The
Yeah.
Cowboys have a chance to make a decent playoff run here. So for those reasons, I would say I'm putting them up there. I don't know power rankings wise where we fall because yes, schedule plays a huge factor in it. But I think just record at the end of the season, if I predicted right now, I think Dallas probably ends up being second in the division. So we'll see.
It's actually a fair argument because they do have a cupcake schedule. If there is one thing going for the Dallas Cowboys, it's that. And you assume a healthy Dak Prescott, although they were 3-5 with Dak Prescott last year. We forget he did play, and then he went out.
That's true.
My big questions are, A, the running game, because Javonte Williams, you loved him a couple of years ago, and now he's had like 9 knee injuries. He's had more, but still, it feels like a lot. And then Miles Sanders, and no Eagle fan wants to hate on Miles Sanders. He was like Saquon Barkley light before you got Saquon Barkley. He had little moments where you're like, I love Miles Sanders. At least I did.
He did.
But those are two very washed up running backs, and they were one of the worst rushing teams in the league last year. And defensively, they've kind of lost their edge, right? I mean, Trayvon Diggs is not the Trayvon Diggs he once was. He had that brief moment where he had all those interceptions, and he was like the shutdown cornerback, and now he's had multiple injuries, and you go, Trayvon Diggs doesn't really scare me. Bland got torched last year. He also had kind of this one little run, and then now Deron Bland is no longer a guy. DeMarvion Overshown coming off a pretty serious knee injury. Is he going to be ready for week 1? It feels like Micah Parsons and a bunch of random dudes. And so I think Dallas, like you said, can win games because of the schedule. But then, you get to 9 wins late in the season, and ESPN's talking about them. Can this be the year? And then they, either miss the playoffs or they get nuked by Philadelphia or they, lose in the first round. It could be rinse and repeat. My big question, though, is really on the Washington Commanders. Because I did this whole deep dive on my channel a couple of days ago because it is the offseason. There's not like a lot of news to go ahead and break down. And so I was like, all right, let's see what each NFC East team did this offseason. And the Commanders have all this hype, and you go, well, first off, they won a lot of games last year that they should have lost. They should have lost to the Saints. It's like a 2-point conversion of way. They should have lost to the Atlanta Falcons. They obviously should have lost to the Chicago Bears. They should have lost to Philadelphia in Week 16 if not been for a drop by Devontae Smith. And you go, this team had all these wins, 12-4, whatever it was. There's 4 wins that should have been losses. They should have been way down. There could have been an 8-win football team. And then you go, what did they do this offseason? And you add Deebo Samuel, who we can joke about being fat. I'm sure he'll be in shape, but even an in-shape Deebo Samuel is not Deebo Samuel from a couple of years ago. Terry McLaurin wants a new contract. We're going to see how much money they're going to shell out to him. And then it's like, okay, does Zach Ertz keep the level up that he's kind of been barely riding the past couple of seasons? Does the running game get a little bit better? Defensively, who's playing cornerback? I mean, obviously, talk about washed up people. They have a couple of corners that seem to be a little bit past their prime, Marshawn Lattimore. I just wonder if people are buying into the Washington Commanders a little too much, and they're going to have a big comeback down to earth situation here in 2025. And the final thought here is I know we keep comparing C.J. Stroud's regression to potentially what could happen with Jaden Daniels, right? Yes, an Eagle fan, Jaden Daniels, C.J. Stroud went back in year 2. C.J. Stroud, I think, has a better overall offense than Jaden Daniels does going into 2025. Stroud had a healthy Tank Dell, obviously. I'm blanking on his name right now, but Nico Collins, an incredible pass catcher. They signed Dalton Schultz. Like they had a ton of really good weapons. And you go to the Commanders and you say, like, Terry's good. Zach Ertz a little old, and now Deebo Samuel. I just don't know if he has as good of a supporting cast. And the sophomore slump is a real deal for the reason that people don't talk about, Josh. And that's because NFL defensive coordinators get film on you and they start to figure things out. And we saw that with Philadelphia by the 3rd time they played Jaden Daniels.
Without a doubt, yes. And he's able to make plays because he's a phenomenal playmaker, as we've seen. But like you mentioned, once they have film on it, that's one of my biggest questions.
It changes.
Are we going to see that regression? And how much are we talking about here? Also, the other part that you throw in as well is not even necessarily as much of Jaden Daniels, of a Cliff Kingsbury. Like, he's had this track record. We've got a lot of stats to back this thing up of Cliff Kingsbury can have a good first year as a play caller. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, wait, well, yeah, that's what he does. Like, we remember. There you go. It's the consistency. It's the we see it coming. It's telegraphing it. He doesn't really change a whole lot of things up. It's what doomed the Eagles in following the 2023 Super Bowl. It's knowing what's going to happen before it actually does. Now, maybe he changes things up, but even if you go back to last year, and I'm not remembering, so I apologize not giving credit who this was. I think it was I can't remember. There was one of the stats, the many that we've seen over Twitter and whatnot, but it was breaking down the different quarterbacks and saying, where they start versus where they finish. And so there's a graph, and I'll try to share it maybe on a later video or later live stream whenever I can find it. But basically, it showed who was able to keep up the level of play or maybe who declined or regressed throughout the latter part of the season. Jaden Daniels was one of the worst quarterbacks in terms of that. Now, he still played good, but you just compare it to how he was playing the first 8-9 weeks of the year versus the final 8 or 9 weeks of the year. And, then you start well, there's the Cliff Kingsbury narrative. Like, people asked him that all the way back at the playoffs, right? They're like, what's this whole narrative? Like, your numbers kind of fall off and all. Well, I haven't really looked into it. I'm not really sure what you're talking about, But if there is something there, then obviously we'd be addressing. He just makes up something there. But it is what it is, and we've seen it time and time again. So at this point, it's like, well, you're going into it. Jimmy Kimsky brought up a great stat that I shared on another video breaking down the Commanders. But over the past, since 1978, a team that improved their wins by 8 or more wins from the following year, which is what Washington did last year, obviously, and how great of a season they had. The next year, which would be this upcoming year, teams averaged to have 4 more losses than they did last season. So all of a sudden, we're talking about them, like a 9-win team? Like, if they follow those stats and trends, so I think just naturally regression is coming, and then all those other reasons that you mentioned, Thomas, like, this is an old team. I think we look at it and say it's Jaden Daniels, so the thought is like, oh, they're this dynamic, fun, exciting, young, up-and-coming team. And it's like, well, not really. They're Jaden Daniels, but it's a lot of old dudes out there. There's 29, 30 guys over 29 or over 30 years old. So they've got an older, aging roster. Now, I think the maybe one difference we could add here of like C.J. Stroud versus the comparison of Jaden Daniels you were talking about is like offensive line plays a huge factor. Does Jaden Daniels have a better offensive line than C.J. Stroud? Probably so, because he's always seemingly, or definitely last year, but always running for his life. But those offensive weapons, I don't know how much more. I love Zach Ertz. We love Zach Ertz. How much more can he do? Like, is he going to decline himself? Are we going to see that from the defensive side of the ball? They've been able to score points, but they can't stop the run to save their life, and that's been every time that the Eagles have played them. So for Philly, it sets up beautifully. I think they made some acquisitions, but it's totally overblown. I'm with you. It's totally overblown, and that's why, for me, as I say, the hype on them, I think they come a little bit back down to earth and could definitely see them not even being that second-place team in the division, which is why, say the Cowboys. Because Commanders also, again, you take a look at their schedule here, which is on the screen. It is a more difficult schedule than what Dallas has to deal with.
Yeah, I think it's 4th hardest in the NFL, I believe, because the Giants are 1. Obviously, ours is very hard. We talked about that before. The Commanders kind of feel like the 2023 Eagles, right? You have the high of 2022, but they kind of had a lot of players who were just pretty close to being obviously at the end or very much where you're like, okay, past our prime right now. I remember Julio Jones. Now, Debo's younger than Julio Jones, but you get kind of a similar, like, the name is there. This is not prime Julio Jones. This is not prime Debo Samuel, and especially defensively. I remember Fletcher Cox was very much at his end in 2023, did not play up to his level. Hassan Reddick, I thought, was kind of entering the latter part of his regression, and we've seen since then all the stuff he's had off the football field. Obviously, we had problems in terms of, linebackers, but Kevin Byard, another name that was exciting, that was very much washed up. James Bradbury also on that list. Philadelphia saw the 2023 model and went, we have got a completely clean house, and a lot of those starters on defense are out of there and replaced with much younger options. So it feels like Washington can 100% continue to rise. They're still a very good football team, and when you have a great quarterback, anything's possible. They need to maybe get through this year, purge some of the old guys, and really start hoping they hit on draft picks like Philadelphia has done, and then you could have a very similar, trajectory that the Eagles have had. Now, Giants quickly here, and that's not to say, by the way, the Commanders are still a good football team. They can still beat the Eagles.
Yes.
They could be better than the Cowboys. We're Eagle fans trying to speculate here, and I do think it is logical on a non-biased, if you're not a Commander fan, to say there is a scenario where they were to take a step back. Now, the Giants, one part that scares me is their defensive line. I think their defense as a whole has struggled against the run. Most NFC East teams, I think all of them were bottom 4, bottom 5 in the league. But that pass rush could be tricky. And it kind of depends on what you get out of Russell Wilson. But the problem is, if you get the same Russell Wilson you got in Pittsburgh last year, you can argue he has less talent and a way worse offensive line. And so it could just be Russell Wilson at 2-4, Russell Wilson at 3-6, and then you pull the plug. Dart comes in, Dart runs around for his life, makes a couple of plays, gets you excited, and you're on to 2026. And so NFC East as a whole, it's going to be interesting. It's always fun. Maybe Dak plays out of his mind and gets the Cowboys on a roll here. As you mentioned, it's an easy schedule. I just don't see Philadelphia being in the same league as these teams, honestly. I think they're just a head above everybody else. I think most of the NFL has also hopped on that train and totally agrees.
Yeah, I'm with you. I had the schedule up for a little bit earlier, and I'll just put it up very quickly for people to reference. We were seeing the Commanders for a long time, but then just looking at Dallas, even though we believe that they're going to certainly lose the first week of the season since that's in Philly. I mean, New York, Chicago, Green Bay, okay. The Jets, Carolina, Washington,
Jeez,
but it's a home game
easy.
at Dallas. Denver, maybe, are we buying them? Are they legit? Was it kind of a fluke thing last year? Arizona, Las Vegas. I mean, my gosh, by the time that they play us in week 12, you could count like 2 to 3 maybe quality team.
Yeah.
And even if they go 1-2 in those games, we're talking about what at that point? A 9-3? Like an 8-4, I guess the bye week, like a
8-4 is very possible.
8-3, they could have a much better. So that's why you go into it, and go, wow, Dallas is near the top in the NFC. They're battling for the NFC East there. But then the latter part of the schedule is then whatever hits it, it's Philadelphia, Kansas City, at Detroit, Minnesota, the Chargers, at Washington, and at New York to end. That becomes a gauntlet at the very end. So they could start to come crash it back down to earth at the very end. But it's only a matter of time, because every team, the national media wants to. They want to pump the Cowboys. So if they start out very well, be like, oh my gosh, this is the season. George Pickens was the trade that helped them get there. This is why we just pump the brakes maybe, or just have that be known of their schedule. And that they're not having to deal with a lot of other areas that, maybe we are, the Commanders, the Giants.
Right.
Feel bad for the Giants because, they're in the division that's difficult to begin with, and then they have those other scheduled games. But, it's set up a little bit easier for them, but I'm totally with you. The Eagles, the makeup of the team, like you also said, the running game and being able to stop it, none of the NFC East teams were able to. I didn't see any moves that they made, all three teams included, that you're like, well, okay, maybe that could help with stopping the run. So Saquon, the O-line, you just lean on him, you stay dominant there, and Philly should be able to take care of business. But there's a reason. 21 years, it's been going on. This division is difficult. Everyone seems to get everyone's best shot, especially in the division. So crazier things have happened, but I think that if we're looking at the best case scenario or the best chance, it's got to be this season with the way that Philly is. Shout out to everybody in chat, by the way, real quick. Appreciate you guys. Make sure to drop a like if you haven't already. John M. Was saying on the road for the 4th, so perfect time for the stream. There you go. It's an earlier stream, but just scheduling and what we're doing here, so weren't able to hop on for the Wednesday Linc. So it's the early Thursday Wednesday Linc. For people that are new, the show had been titled or called Wednesday Linc, so that's for the reason. Eagle One Matt with a 50 bomb.
Whoa.
Appreciate that. Says, boom, back-to-back, go Birds, happy 4th of July weekend. And then his predictions here, saying Eagles 12-5, Commies 10-7, Giants 8-9, and then Dallas 7-10. So he was going with the same viewpoint that you were having on the first through 4th.
Yeah. 8 wins for the Giants would be pretty impressive, although they would have to get to round 8 to be able to beat the Cowboys out. And now that we talk schedule, it's hard to believe that would happen. Maybe I'm switching a little bit here, and we appreciate the donation there, Eagle One. And you're probably right, but I like 12-4, right? 12-4, 12-5, whatever the number is. I do think Commanders are a 9 or a 10 win football team right now. Then maybe Dallas is an 8 or a 9 win team, and then maybe the Giants are a 6 win football team. Because I think the Giants are going to be a 3 or 4 win team because they obviously have more talent. But 6, maybe you get to 7. If you're New York, you're trying to get above 500 this year. That's like your Super Bowl, right? Every team's, week 1, it's like our goal is to win the division. That's goal 1. Then win a playoff game and then win a Super Bowl. The Giants' goal week 1 is to get to 500, and I think it's going to be a little bit difficult. But, we'll see. We'll see.
It's It's going to be brutal, quite honestly. And we've had this conversation before of like, how on earth did Joe Shane and Brian Dable keep their jobs? But you look at this schedule, and again, here we go. I'll pull up the Giants now. So you're looking at the New York Giants schedule.
It's
This
rough,
is one
man.
of those where you drafted Jackson Dart, and you could potentially see this as either a John Mara loses patience, because he did say his patience is wearing thin, but loses patience in the middle of the season, and it might be like, hey, forget it. Scrap it. I don't care. We're playing a rookie quarterback. We're getting him reps. I don't care if we win or lose. You guys are done anyway. Could just go ahead and cut bait with him, or just like have them as lame ducks and just, all right, do the job, whatever, you're going to be done. But you look at the schedule. I mean, Giants play at Washington, at Dallas, at home against Kansas City, home against the Chargers, at New Orleans. I mean, New Orleans, even if you're not believing in like what they're doing, at New Orleans is always a difficult place to play. At New Orleans, a home game against Philly, at
Thursday
Denver,
night.
right? At Denver, at Philly, home game against San Francisco, at Chicago. I mean, what, like two games? You would be surprised if they won more than two of those games.
Yeah, it's brutal. That is brutal.
And we're into
overall.
week 10 by that point.
Philly at Denver at Philly is such a brutal stretch, because obviously you have to fly all the way to Denver, play at Mile High, and then go play at Philadelphia. And then you have San Francisco, who they have a very easy schedule, think that they're going to be much better this year. I'm a little bit, iffy on that. But, yeah, I mean, listen, you got to play a first-place schedule. Even if you get the fourth place in the NFC East, welcome to playing in the NFC these days. The NFC's tough. I mean, for all we keep hearing about the AFC this, the AFC that, the NFC is not easy right now, and it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to have to justify what will be a losing record. But then they will probably want to keep Brian Dable, because it'll be like, well, I got to develop Jackson Dart. You don't bring in a new coach who didn't draft your rookie quarterback. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I'm glad I'm wearing Eagles green instead of Giants blue, because it could be rough. I would not be feeling brutal. Good.
I mean, it even just goes beyond it, too. I'm just looking at you think they have 2 wins maybe by week 10. Then they play Green Bay at Detroit, at New England, bye week, Washington, Minnesota, at Las Vegas, and Dallas.
No, I'm not interested.
Wow.
No, thanks.
If they have 8 wins, they're probably, 8 wins is probably not making the playoffs for sure. But like, if they get 8 wins, that's a huge win that would certainly have to save Brian Dable and Joe Shane's job, even for not making the playoffs, which is hard to do. I mean, as bad as they've been and as little success as they've had, it almost feels like they have to make the playoffs to save their job. But with that schedule and everything else, all things considered, I think if they went 8-9, you're like, well, all right, let's run it back one more time. Let's see. But they also, and last thing here, because we're not going to go too much, but I had mentioned it with Anthony whenever we're recording, the Giants are the one team out of every team in the NFL that are bringing back the most amount of returning starters. The 91% of returning starters. It's not like they're the Super Bowl champs. It's not like, like if Philly did that, sure, as many people are coming back, totally makes sense. Great. But you're a team that did not perform up to expectations. So you would assume like, oh, maybe they bring back like 30%, 40% of their starters, or maybe even a little bit higher, but not 91 to be the most out of any NFL team. But, it's Joe Shane. He's got a plan, apparently. It helped Philly win the Super Bowl. So thank you, Joe Shane. We have Saquon Barkley that way.
What are you going to do?
We love it, just living in the moment. I will say as the slower point of the offseason, it's hit us a little bit, but it's definitely gotten to that point. Now it always feels like 4th of July is kind of that like bigger moment of wow, okay, we've definitely reached that point, because you're 3 weeks from training camp. There's not a whole lot extra going on. Players are on break, all this other stuff here. But, you relive some moments. You watch some Super Bowl highlights. You get hyped for the season. We're all ready for it. We're definitely ready for it. And then we get these outlandish takes, which, we got to talk about a little bit, because we haven't jumped on here. We've texted about it and shared it in our own videos. But Nolan Smith, this hypothetical, because TJ Watt might be available for a trade, rumors of teams checking in. So who do you trade for him? And I don't name the names to give any credit, because it's just lunacy. But Nolan Smith was the hypothetical of being looped in for a trade for TJ Watt and a pick. It's crazy. It's idiotic. I know we've both talked about it on our own individual shows, but it's just that time of season. We'll just say that. It's that time of year. We just throw things out there. Well, hey, what about this one? But it's, come on, get out of here. It just does not make any sense for a trade of a TJ Watt.
The funny thing about all of this, Josh, and I talked about this on a recent show, this all stems from, because we talked about TJ Watt, off and on the entire offseason. Most of us, at least you and I, have been saying it's not possible. It's not going to happen, along with Trey Hendrickson. But TJ Watt's been thrown around, right? Because he's upset about his contract. He's going to want $39+ million a year. And so they just gave Jalen Ramsey 26. Get me out of here. You get the deal. The whole Nolan Smith thing comes from WIP having on a Pittsburgh radio host who was explaining, when asked about what would it take for TJ Watt to be traded, he said, well, I think they want to get younger, so I guess if Philadelphia offered us Nolan Smith in a late-round draft pick, we'd give you TJ Watt. That's where it comes from. And then all the little blogs go, TJ Watt to Philadelphia, Nolan Smith, blah, blah, and then WIP ran with it yesterday or 2 days ago. And so it's not like it's being actually reported. It was a person connected, if you want to call a radio host connected with a team, giving his... What would it take? Yeah, give me Nolan Smith, right? The reason this doesn't happen, Josh, is so simple. A, money, and B is age. We just talked about the Commanders are too old, and Philadelphia in 2023 also was too old. I'm not saying TJ Watt is too old. Only had 11.5 sacks last year. I think the TJ Watt, who gets 19.5, 20 sacks a season, he's around that area. 17.5 is a very common number. I don't know if we're going to see that again. We might get it for one more year, maybe. But I think he's kind of an 11, 12, 13 sack guy, which is really good. But could Nolan Smith get to that number this year? If Nolan gets to 9 and TJ Watt gets to 13, and you're paying Nolan Smith $3 million this year and TJ Watt $39 million a year, $39 million this year, no one in their right minds would do that trade right now. If I told you 17 for TJ, 9 for Nolan, what would you do? The other factor, Josh, I think Nolan Smith truly has kind of taken over the mantle from Brandon Graham. And I think Philadelphia loved Brandon Graham for so many years. They always want to have a Brandon Graham on the Eagles football team. That doesn't be an edge rusher. It just happens Nolan Smith is an edge rusher, and it's just like Brandon Graham. We've met him multiple times. He's met Brandon Graham multiple times. They're very similar in terms of their personalities. I don't think they trade him simply because of the locker room disruption that it would have, because he is now built, heading into year 3, the rapport with his teammates, especially at the end of last year, and also a leadership standpoint that I think the young defense needs. Not to say TJ Watt couldn't come in and be a leader, but it's different when you're just this new guy traded over here and you were a leader for, years at a different place. I think trading Nolan Smith really comes down to money, age, and truly the locker room that would not want to see him leave. And so, obviously, it's not going to happen. If Howie wanted to make a trade, he would have done it by now. There's just no world where they would give up capital for TJ Watt and then give him $39 million a year for 3 seasons, especially with the contracts the way they currently are, the need for Jalen Carter. You just dropped a video about Reed Blankenship. He needs a new deal, about $10 to $12 million a year. It's just not going to happen, and it's just funny how you get a radio host to say that Nolan Smith should be involved, and that becomes the rumor that the Eagles are shopping Nolan Smith, and then everyone goes crazy.
Yeah, because, Well, and the other element to that is the Pittsburgh radio host was coming on from the sister station of WIP. So
wow, amazing how that works.
These stories sometimes tell themselves. So we got to make this thing up here a little bit. Not that it was. I don't know. Yeah. I don't have any sources to say that was legit there, but it's just strange when you have an interview guest from a sister station and go, hey, it'd be kind of nice here. We just start a little something, have a talking point. Which, we're talking about it too. I get it. I know some people are like, yeah, but you guys, yes, because it becomes the story, becomes the initiative. Everyone has a take, and we're surprised because we've also seen there's polls out there of people that are voting on this thing, and like 38% would do the trade. They say they would do the trade. So that to me was the most alarming thing, regardless of what they're trying to stir up just nonsense and hypotheticals.
Right.
It's just the mindset of like, okay, do people really fully appreciate and realize what Nolan Smith brings to this team? So, that people knew this before I even say it, but I'm 100% in favor of everything that you're saying for Nolan Smith. But it's also the element of what does it say about the Eagles as an organization? Like, there's a reason why they're viewed from almost every player around the league differently than other teams, because there's typically a little bit more loyalty Like players want to play for Philly because if you come here, you're going to be appreciated and you're going to be paid like that. You're going to be treated like that. Howie Roseman won't just move on from a guy. Plus, really big fan of Nolan Smith. He is, and you hear that in the phone call that he had, as soon as you drafted him, all the other elements there. But if you go ahead and make that trade, not that Howie's opposed to making a big trade to be like, okay, hey, we go win a Super Bowl. Yes, he has those sights in there. But there's a lot of an element of, as you're saying, that it's the locker room vibes, the chemistry, bringing it internal, and what Nolan Smith has. I think it would not necessarily, like, it wouldn't ruin the locker room. That'd be overkill. But it would definitely shake up things to go, whoa, like, that was one of the foundational people. Like, that was one of the vocal leaders here. This is the guy that we were excited to build with, thinking maybe he's going to be here in Philly for a long time to come. And just like that, he's traded away for a TJ Watt. Yes, TJ Watt's good, but I'm with you. And shout out to Anthony. I was pulling up the article that he most recently wrote, but just the breakdown of Nolan Smith and TJ Watt's sack rates and true pass rush win percentage. Granted, TJ Watt gets more of those double teams, but Nolan had a better sack rate. He had a better pressure rate. He had a better win rate, and those take out double teams and other instances like play actions and fewer pass rushes to deal with and things like that. So small sample size, a 1-year season, but Nolan Smith, there's a reason he set the franchise record for most sacks in a postseason. There's a reason everybody's hyped. There's a reason where even doubters or guys who are kind of like, I don't know, not so sure about Nolan Smith. Heck, Reuben Frank recently wrote an article thinking he legit could see Nolan Smith getting 12 to 14 sacks. And it wasn't too long ago where he's going like, I don't know what's happening with Nolan Smith. And that's a lot of people, sure.
Yeah.
But there's so much potential on top of the other chemistry elements that you mentioned. It does not make any sense at all. So the 38%, I get that it's the flashy move. I get that, last year, Saquon Barkley, but that's a signing. That's not a trade away, a crucial. That's not like, hey, because in a similar instance, it would almost be as if, like, hey, Saquon Barkley is available. You want to trade away Devontae Smith? You want to trade away Smitty? We can get Saquon, but you got to trade away Smitty. Like that's I feel like a pretty fair comparison there. It's like, come on, get what? Why? Like that's another foundational piece. So you make the moves when it makes sense, and not giving away too much capital, which is why Howie's the best at what he does. IBH with a 10. We appreciate that. Says same old WIP. We got some emojis there, but BS.
I think it's a bowl, and some crap. I think it's what that is. Yeah.
They started. I lost the go. There we go. They started the A.J. Brown trade crap with Sister Station in Boston. I remember that now. Yep. They must be dead in the ratings. They're looking for clicks. My advice to Eagles fans: don't click the. Yes, you're right. Don't click the.
Great point on the A.J. Brown thing. It was the exact same thing because it was the sister station in Boston who came out and said A.J. Brown linked him with the Patriots, and we went down that rabbit hole for a good 2 weeks, and you and I were saying the entire time this isn't happening, and now you have a sister station somewhere else also throwing it in there. Now, I actually worked for this, overall station, like Odyssey, like the station in Atlanta here, same with Philadelphia. I was never privy on conversations about making up trade stuff, and so whether they do it or not, I have absolutely no idea. But I do know that July 3rd, the ratings are dead on WIP because it's the off season. And obviously, you look at our channels. Our channel numbers are definitely down as well. They're not as down as much as WIP's numbers are down. I'm pretty sure of that. But it is the off season, and so when you have a 4-hour radio show like these guys have to do every single day, you got to fill 3 14-minute, essentially, segments an hour. So 3 times 4, 12, 13-minute segments an hour, what a 4-hour radio station comes down to. And again, I used to do this. So you can't talk baseball the entire 4 hours because, we're on game, 50, 60, whatever the number is, right? You're not even halfway through the MLB season, and you're talking MLS. Basketball's now over. They have to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, and the only way you can do that right now in a long-form, non-YouTube-y way, like we do, because we do deep dives and stuff like that, is trade speculation. And so it makes sense, honestly. I mean, got to do what you got to do.
Throw it out there. It's just the ones, like when it's relatively making sense, I don't mind it as much. But whenever it's the ones out there, like, get out of here. Come on. We're not trading away Nolan Smith. The salary cap ramification, the chemistry, all that goes into play. So, like you could throw out other guys, and I made the, like, Darnell Washington was the talk before Donald Parham got injured because you're like, well, hey, there's some surplus there. And then the trade of Jonnu Smith. So it's, well, maybe you could see if there's an availability because a third tight end, if Howie views that, you could trade away for, we have so many draft picks next year. You could easily part with one or two of those and be like, hey, you wanted to get a really dominant, elite pass blocking or run blocking, pass blocking tight end for Saquon Barkley? Absolutely. But, that's more along the lines of, okay, maybe something like that versus when we want to trade away, or the speculation of trading away a vital piece like a Nolan Smith. Cranky says, I wouldn't trade Nolan either, but I'm sure Josh panicked just a little when he first heard it.
Yeah, Josh would have like a funeral. That'd be a fun video to watch. Josh's reaction to Nolan Smith getting traded. I would click on that video. That'd be very fun.
Okay, so I did not panic. It is fair. If that happened, absolutely, there would be, I don't even know what the emotions would be. There was no panic whenever I saw that. If anything, it was just like extreme irritation, like frustrated, irritated, because I'm like, what are we doing? It's the stupidest thing out there. But no, like whenever I saw it, I also was very much like we say, there's things that when you see them, you're kind of like, oh, hey, maybe that happened. Maybe that's a possibility. There's others that are out there that are like, get out of here. There's just no chance. And so that was one of those categories. But yes, if at some point, I will make a reaction video. You know that. If something like that were to happen, it may take me like a week. I might have to take some bereavement, and then I'll come back and be like, all right, we're finally in a better place. But let's see. We've got another super chat, actually, from Matt. Another 2. Appreciate that. Says, ratings never drop for you. Or never drop for you, too. There we go. Well, Matt, we appreciate you. Says, hey now.
And they don't. Now, again, Josh and I now do this for a living, and so we are very privy to our view count and stuff like that. We know the offseason is a dip overall. But it is true. I mean, the number of you guys that still support and watch our shows in late June and July is not overlooked by us, and we greatly appreciate it. When a video hits 30,000 views and 40,000 views, and you guys know there's not much to talk about, and we're, doing deep dives into the NFC East, and you're still watching, we obviously greatly appreciate that. So we thank you guys for that. And we're almost there. Josh and I were talking before we came on live. We have next week, okay? The week after, okay? And then that following week they report. Like we're pretty much there. And by the time they report, you get like a couple of weeks of practices, and then they got a preseason game. And you're like, oh my gosh, we got to talk about preseason game. And then, so it's going to snowball here very quickly. But you got about 2 more weeks of what will likely be very dead stuff unless someone signs, which you talked about on your show today. Because if they were to do Justin Simmons, they were to do somebody else. I saw Keenan Allen's name was thrown around because he remains unsigned. I don't know if I'd do that, but his name was thrown around there. Tyler Boyd's name was thrown around there. I mean, a couple of guys. So if they were going to get there before training camp, they'd sign the next couple of weeks. But either way, that does lead to the Clouder of 3 super chat here asking, have they signed Mukuba yet? I don't believe so. I think Drew Mukuba remains unsigned as of right now, Josh. So not that that's a problem. He's been practicing. Devontae Smith at this charity softball game said he's been very impressive. Couldn't pronounce his name, which I thought was pretty funny. But no, Drew Mukuba is unsigned. He will be signed before day 1 of training camp. This is not a, Cincinnati Bengals situation. It's going to happen.
Right. Yeah. And we saw the same from Kelee Ringo in the past. Landon Dickerson. There's one other that I'm drawing a blank, I think. But it's almost every single year. There's one player that takes a little bit longer for whatever, if it's a little bit of guaranteed money, just a little wording, specifics that they're haggling over in the contract. Sure. But I'm with you. There's not a concern. We don't have Mukuba Drew going on there and like slandering the Eagles, which since he doesn't know what they're doing either, but like, I don't know who you are as a rookie to like take shots at the organization that just drafted you, but that's a whole nother story. So we don't have that issue. Drew's going to be fine. And we'll let everybody know when he does officially sign, but there's no reason to freak out, get concerned. I was going to mention as well, because you were talking about quickly training camp will be here. We'll start covering those details. We'll have preseason. And the thing that I'm really looking forward to as well is the game streams. So we'll obviously have the game streams during the regular season. We have the preseason as well, kind of the trial run, shake the rust off for ourselves and try out some new things. So exciting things planned. Stay tuned for that. People looking out for the game streams. But we'll have those all throughout the season and some new reveals. We'll just say that for right now. Some new reveals
trying to make it
streams, and should be fun.
Try to make it more and more interesting because a lot of you guys had the game on, and then you have us on, And then some of you guys are like driving, so you have us on listening. Some of you guys are just watching us. We're trying to make it as interesting as possible because we had quite a few streams where it was like over 100,000 people, have clicked on it and watched. And so we want to make sure we're giving you guys a upgraded product year to year. Draft coverage, I thought was upgraded. Our draft night stuff was fantastic. Working on more stuff like that. So obviously stay tuned for that. And we'll debut that, a little bit during the preseason. But obviously that Thursday night opener is going to be highly watched. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So we can't wait.
Big time. Had the Brazil one last year, which was
it was a big one.
Crazy,
it was a big stream.
Fun, and everything else. But yeah, you get a Thursday night Super Bowl, the Super Bowl banner getting revealed, the Cowboys. That's not too bad. They gotta watch that one. I'm excited. I really hope that we get a pan to Jerry Jones at some point during that banner.
I'm sure we will.
Somebody's got to put a camera on him. So. But yes, we will share that with everybody. Looking forward to it. LA Kid with a 5. Appreciate that, man. Says, what's up, Josh and Thomas? No question. Just wanted to say hi.
There you go. How about that? We appreciate that. We're at the off season where people don't even have questions for us. We're at that point where like all the questions have been asked. And so it's like, what are you going to do?
Well, should we say though, this is also another point to bring up. It's totally different than last year. Like this is the beauty of the team. Now there's an element to it of being like, what do we have to talk about? There's hardly anything because there's so little questions, concerns, positional battles, what's going to happen here or there. It's safety spot, which we've talked to death. There's right guard, but we already know, like it's so solidified, basically. I mean, if Tyler Steen, as long as there's no injuries or something like that. But there's not as much. Last year, we were going into it like Kellen Moore. What's the offense going to look like? Jalen saying it's 95% different,
I remember that.
How is that going to view Vic Fangio? Yes, there's a belief in him, but my gosh, there's a lot of defensive guys that did not play well last year. Was that them? Was that Sean Desai? Was it Matt Patricia? Who was it? I mean, there were so many questions and areas of concern and all sorts of stuff. Whereas, there's not as much now because you come off of a Super Bowl. You got guys focused, saying the right things. There's not as much drama. At least with a team. Some people trying to create stuff, but with a team themselves, not drama. So a little bit different. It's not a bad place to be. A little less news, I guess, but not a bad place to be for a fan of the team.
We'll do Brandon's super chat here in a second. I see Teef SPN says, when's the ring ceremony and are you guys invited? So the ring ceremony is July 18th. We've been told that, and I think that that's public knowledge now, so we can say that. We were told when we were at the NovaCare Complex that it was supposed to be the Friday after we were there, and then they had delayed it, and we knew it was going to be in later July. We didn't know the exact date. So it is July 18th. I'm not sure why they delayed it. They never really told us, but we were told that it was going to be delayed. We have not been invited. And I was actually looking at this, Josh. I don't know if they invite, like, obviously there are local media people there, but I don't know if they invite anybody outside of the organization. So I don't think we get an invite either way. We also have not seen the rings, but I don't know, maybe work our contacts, get an invite to the party. That'd be fun to vlog. So
I wouldn't mind it. Yeah, we've got the invite for training camp. So, hey,
we did get an invite to training camp. We don't know when. We'll let you guys know, especially if it's a day that's like when people can show up and stuff like that. But we don't know. But we're going to be there. So we'll be there for a day or two.
Oh, yeah. Get some decent footage, hopefully. At the very least, because, I understand they're very cautious with the way of sharing some clips and videos and things like that from training. But at the very least, it's maybe just to get some eyewitness reports because it's so difficult at times, when you're like, and shout out to the beat writers because they give at least some glimpses, but we can't see it. But it's so difficult to be like, okay, so who's getting the first team reps? Like, how much are we talking about? Is it significant enough? Or is like, oh, yeah, they got one rep and then write it back off the field. So hopefully, at the very least, we can get that. And then who knows? Maybe Dom can get us out for a little bit more. We'll
never know.
See we love Big Dom. Pull off there.
We love Big Dom.
Brendan with a 2. Appreciate that one. Also, the home opener score prediction was the comment there. I think you commented on the
27-13.
27-13.
Those games are always lower scoring. It's always a little messy. It's always a little ugly. I remember the Eagles Super Bowl opener against the Falcons after winning the Super Bowl in 2018, and they ran the Philly special, but the offense was kind of iffy, and they won that game, but it didn't look pretty. Majority of the time, the home team, the reigning champs win the game. Think back to Baltimore and the Chiefs last year with the toe tap by Isaiah Likely that was out of bounds. I think we win. I think it's not as dominant as people would like to think it should be because you could easily say, 31-10 or, 41-17. I think it's going to be a little bit lower scoring, but Philly obviously by more than 7. So I go 27-13.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I don't mind that score. That's not too bad. That feels actually pretty. I mean, 20. I don't know. I might go a little because the offense is just kind of shady. 24. Yeah, I mean, 24-17, maybe a touchdown, just a little bit closer, but it could be like a garbage time score. But yeah, I think 24-17. I agree. It's usually, although some people would argue like, well, hey, what about Brazil? But that I mean, the field was so terrible last year that like. I don't care if offenses were rusty or not. Like, how many times was it? Defender slips down, and AJ on his 70-yard catch and run touchdown. The Packers had multiple. Jaden Reed looked like a all-pro in that game. So, yeah, I agree. I think that's a decent score prediction. Let's see. Did I miss one of those super chats? Was there one? Oh yeah, 007. Appreciate the 2. Says love you guys. Been watching Mott since chat days.
Jeez.
Been a minute.
Throwback. Much happier days these days. I appreciate all you guys who have been watching since those days. So welcome to this side of the fun. So, yep, I appreciate you guys. A lot of you guys do. I know I get a lot of chats like that in my comment section. Been with you, since the early days, and so we appreciate that. Come a long way. We got a long way to go. So
we do. Just getting started there. I mean, can you imagine that we were talking with someone, I won't put them out there publicly, just in case they have supporters, but someone, a prominent content creator themselves of the NFL, who believes the Eagles are in their dynasty era. So we don't want to jinx it either.
Yes,
but
yes.
I also wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. I think that there's a lot of reason to be optimistic about the Eagles. So let's just say there's a lot of fan bases, I think, and certainly creators that would be like, oh yeah, this is a pretty good time to be an Eagles fan. So Jalen Hurts, extra focus, getting that Super Bowl. I mean, we've talked about it since they basically like right after they won. But it's like it's the accomplishment, but it's also I think the psychological aspect to look back on even when you're struggling to go, but we got one. Like we know what we know the grind, we know what it takes to get to the top of the mountain. It's not always going to be easy. But you got the right guys in place. You got the guys who want to be coached hard. Reed Blankenship said that. Everyone else has echoed the same sentiment on the defensive side of the ball. If Miami players can't stand it, or some of the players that used to be coached by Fangio can't, fine. But you got the right guys on the defensive side, the youth, the chemistry. I mean, we could just go down the line. But as long as health, we pray for health. We speak health over the team, because as long as they're healthy, I think that's a big factor always, but definitely for a squad like this, there's just not really a reason to see that the Eagles can't go back, even if it's a few less wins during the regular season, because it's a little bit more difficult of schedule, to still be right there at the top of the NFC, go through, make it to the Super Bowl, and I mean, all bets are off. But we'd obviously take Philly, so it's a good place.
Yep, 100%.
Not a bad spot.
Someone said that Future Generations said between the 2024 draft and camp, the Eagles signed Mekhi Becton last year, hinting that now could be a time to make a move. I Googled it, and it looks like Becton signed on April 29th of last year. So it's not necessarily the draft. It was, or in between, it was really like the draft is when they signed him. So they didn't really make a move, I can remember, at this time last year. But they did obviously get Gardner Johnson kind of towards the beginning of training camp, towards the actually middle of training camp. So anything's possible.
That's true. Always keeping an eye out for potential targets there. Fanny with a 5. Appreciate that, Fanny. Says, hey, Josh and Tom, happy 4th. Happy early 4th. Hope you got some safe plans. Says, be safe, everyone. Remember, chat members, the judge is not back until Monday. Go Birds.
Keep those fingers. Keep those fingers. Be careful, everybody.
Don't.
Keep those fingers. JPP knows. Keep them.
Use your best judgment. Don't. Yep.
Oh, man.
Go Birds, though. Appreciate that, Fanny. Yes, blessings for everybody. Stay safe. I don't know. Do y'all ever, do y'all typically shoot off? We've occasionally shot off fireworks, not very often, but every once in a while.
Well, you have 2 girls, so girls don't really care about it, and we don't have kids yet. But as a kid, as a guy, my brother and I, little boys, we loved it. So yes, we did growing up. I've not shot off a firework that I personally bought because we did it like a family's friend's place last year in a while. But no, as soon as you have a boy, you got to get the boy fireworks. It's very fun. Just teach him how to do it, you know?
Right, yeah. Be honest, have you ever shot a Roman candle at anybody?
Of course. I'm a boy, and I had a brother. Of course I have.
We know what the right answer on that, the truthful answer, yes.
Drop them in, and yeah, not very safe. But
I think it's the one of my grandpa realizing that me and my twin brother were shooting Roman candles at each other across the street, you know, from one front yard to the other front yard.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, okay, that's not really a good game, but who hasn't done that? Like
who
you're
hasn't?
Saying.
Yep.
The difficult one is the bottle rocket that almost went into the living room. So, you know, but that's a story for another
different
day.
Story. Yeah, yeah. Good way
Everyone's
to get
okay, but yeah, that's one to maybe we took a break from fireworks for a little bit after that. Needless to say, but yes, whether you're shooting them off, Philly native says 7 big old mortars for $300. So those must be some
there you go.
Gigantic.
Those are gonna be some big ones.
Be careful though. We
Yeah.
had some fuses malfunction before. Don't want it stadium grade. I was gonna say they better be if they're $300 for 7 of them.
Stadium grade.
Gosh. Cheese date Roman candle fights are the best. See, there you go.
Everybody's done it.
Yeah.
Every guy's done it. You know who you are. Come on. You know who you are.
We're getting those. Okay. Well, last bit here as we're wrapping up, and we do appreciate you guys as always. Make sure to like and subscribe. Lots of other stuff planned in the future, as we've mentioned. But cool, exciting giveaways. As far as somebody's going with the schedule win prediction. So Jason's saying 13. Or wait, no, is this the score? We will not have played a start of the preseason. Will not show anything in week 1.
Yeah, I think he's saying score.
I was going to say 13-3's record, but
13-3
win.
Be some upset people in Philly despite a 13-3 win. Just FYI.
Good God. Yeah, I mean, defensively, we'd be like, okay, well, you hold to 3, but 13 points. Okay. Little concerning there for the only 13. Antonio, morning from Honduras. Hugs to you guys.
Morning.
Sweet. Appreciate you hanging out here. Yeah, lastly, though, we're talking about Andrew Mukuba briefly for the signing, but the other part was Devontae Smith, naturally mentioning him or calling him out at his celebrity softball game, which we were not at due to some scheduling conflicts and things like that, but sounded like everybody had a great time. I think it's cool that Smitty mentioned, he couldn't say his name, but he mentioned Drew. It's something. We'll see more, obviously, for training camp, but when it comes to the safety spot, that's the one area that we do continue to bring up and say, okay, at the moment, yes, if a rookie is turning heads, and we've seen that in the past of, like, you think about, not to the same magnitude, of course, but, like, we've seen guys going, like, who's standing out to you? Jalen Carter, because, he is what he is, and he was what he was as a rookie. So it's not to that same extent, but I still think that even as in A.J. Brown, Smitty last year, kept mentioning Quinyon Mitchell before he was even getting those first-team reps, and then we really started to see it. We'll just preface it. We'll say, keep an eye out for Drew, because if he's able to continue that type of momentum, Smitty's noticing, then we start getting that in a couple weeks or 3 weeks once training camp hits. Maybe so, because that, I think, would be the ultimate hope and goal for most all Eagles fans. Like, hey, you drafted Drew for a reason at that position. If he can be your starting safety next to Reed Blankenship, the way things stands right now, for sure, but even in the future, it's just that much better because you have one of the, if not the youngest defenses in the NFL, one of the cheapest. It won't be for long because you got guys you're going to have to pay, but just capitalizing on it and take advantage because Howie continues to hit on the draft picks.
Yep, I agree.
All right. Well, I think that does it for us. We got some other mortar stories. It looks like had a mortar blow in the tube was that's what I say. Stay safe. Be careful. It may not be worth it. Just watch them from afar. That's what we're going to do this year. But Yendor, I know you were heated, Josh, when Nolan Smith, TJ Watt report came out. Foolishness. Yes, I was irritated. I said that earlier, but maybe catching late. Frustrated, irritated, annoyed, all the other sorts of ways to describe that. But yeah, stay vigilant. You guys know what's legit and maybe what's not. But we'll keep you posted. If there's anything crazy, we'll try to hop on a live stream, of course, and keep you guys. Otherwise, more videos to come. Stay tuned. Appreciate it. As always, go Birds.
Go Birds.